Absalom. His name alone evokes both admiration and tragedy. He was the son of the mighty King David, a man after God's own heart. But unlike his father, Absalom's story is one of rebellion, pride, and a heartbreaking downfall. The Bible describes Absalom as the most handsome man in all of Israel. He had charm, power, and an undeniable presence that made people look up to him. But beneath the surface, there was something darker, an ambition that would drive him to betray the very man who gave him life. This is not just an ancient tale. Absalom's story carries powerful lessons for us today. It speaks to the dangers of unchecked pride, the thirst for recognition, and the fragile nature of family relationships. How many times have we seen the same patterns in our own world? Children who rebel against their parents, leaders who rise and fall because of arrogance, and people who lose themselves in their pursuit of power and validation. What happens when ambition turns into betrayal? What does his story teach us about leadership, humility, and the dangers of unchecked ego? From the moment he was born, Absalom was destined for greatness. As the son of King David, he was not just royalty, he was a symbol of power, beauty, and potential. The people of Israel admired him. He was the kind of leader they could look up to, someone who carried himself with confidence, someone who looked like a king. The Bible describes Absalom as the most handsome man in all of Israel. His thick, flowing hair was a thing of legend, and his striking appearance made him stand out among the sons of David. But Absalom was not just a man of looks, he was intelligent, charismatic, and ambitious. People were naturally drawn to him, and he knew it. As the prince of Israel, Absalom lived a privileged life. He had wealth, influence, and access to the greatest minds in the kingdom. He was respected, admired, and given a position of honor as the son of the king. But despite all of this, there was something growing inside him, a hunger for more. Despite his father's love, Absalom's relationship with King David was complicated. David was a great warrior and a man of God, but he was not a perfect father. His reign was marked by triumphs, but also by failures that deeply affected his children. Absalom saw these flaws. He saw his father make mistakes. He saw moments of weakness, of indecision, of compromise. And slowly, a thought took root in his heart: I could do better. I should be king. At first, this thought was just a whisper. But over time, it grew louder. And as Absalom's confidence in himself increased, his respect for his father began to fade. Absalom's story is not just an ancient drama, it is a reflection of the world we live in today. How many people, blessed with talent and opportunity, become consumed by their own ambition? How often do we see individuals who, instead of being content with what they have, are driven by the belief that they deserve more? In the modern world, social media amplifies this mindset. People measure their worth by likes, followers, and fame. They compare themselves to others, believing they should be at the top, that they are more deserving, more capable. Just like Absalom, many fall into the trap of thinking they are the only ones fit to lead. But what happens when ambition crosses the line into rebellion? What happens when pride blinds a man to the price he must pay? Absalom was about to find out. Power is a dangerous thing when mixed with pride. For Absalom, admiration was not enough. He wanted more. He wanted control. And as his desire for power grew, so did his resentment toward his father. At first, it was subtle. A thought. A whisper. I could lead better than him. But soon, it became an obsession. Absalom no longer saw his father as the anointed king, he saw him as an obstacle. Absalom's pride was not just in his abilities, it was in his appearance. The Bible says that from the top of his head to the sole of his feet, there was no flaw in him. His hair, thick and luxurious, was his crown, a symbol of his strength and status. Every year, when he cut it, the weight of it was measured and admired. But beauty can be deceiving. While the people saw a prince fit for the throne, Absalom saw himself as something greater. His pride grew, and with it, his impatience. He was no longer willing to wait for his time, he would take what he believed was his. Absalom began questioning his father's leadership. He saw David's moments of hesitation, his failures as a ruler and as a father. And with each failure, his belief grew stronger: David is weak. I am strong. The seed of rebellion had been planted, and soon, Absalom would act. How many times do we see the same thing in our world today? People obsessed with their own image, their own success, their own power. Social media feeds the idea that we must always be seen, always be admired. People crave attention, validation, and control. Absalom was no different. His pride blinded him. He believed he deserved more. And when a man believes he is greater than those in authority, rebellion is inevitable. But rebellion has a cost. And for Absalom, that cost would be higher than he ever imagined. Absalom knew that power was not simply taken, it was won. And to win it, he needed the hearts of the people. He could not openly challenge King David yet, but he could plant seeds of doubt, whisper words of discontent, and slowly turn the kingdom against its rightful ruler. Absalom positioned himself at the city gate, the place where the people of Israel came to seek justice. Whenever someone approached with a grievance, he would intercept them before they could reach the king. He would listen, nod with sympathy, and then say, "If only I were appointed judge in the land. Then everyone who has a complaint or case could come to me, and I would see that they receive justice." With these words, Absalom did more than promise justice, he planted doubt. Doubt in his father's leadership. Doubt in David's ability to rule. And as the days passed, more and more people began to look to Absalom as their true leader. But it was not just his words that won them over. When people came to bow before him, Absalom would lift them up, embrace them as equals. He was charming, affectionate, a man who cared, or so they believed. Absalom's actions were not driven by love for the people but by ambition. He did not seek justice, he sought power. And in his quest for the throne, he became what every corrupt leader becomes: a manipulator, a deceiver, a man willing to betray even his own blood. The people of Israel did not see his heart. They only saw his beauty, his charm, his promises. And so, little by little, their loyalty shifted. After years of deception, Absalom was ready to make his move. Under the pretense of offering a sacrifice in Hebron, he gathered his followers and declared himself king. The news spread like wildfire. Absalom has taken the throne. It was a betrayal unlike any other. Not only had he turned the people against his father, but he had now claimed the kingdom for himself. How often do we see this same pattern in the world around us? Leaders who rise through deception. Public figures who build their image on charm and manipulation rather than integrity. Politicians who promise justice but seek only power. Absalom's betrayal is not just a moment in history, it is a warning. A warning about the dangers of pride, ambition, and the pursuit of power at any cost. But betrayal comes with consequences. And Absalom's greatest battle was yet to come. The moment Absalom declared himself king, David knew, this was not just a rebellion. This was a war. For a father, few pains are greater than the betrayal of a son. David had fought many battles in his life, but none as personal as this. His own flesh and blood had risen against him, turned the people against him, and now sought to take the throne by force. But David was not just a father, he was a king. And a king must act. News of Absalom's rebellion spread fast. With the hearts of the people now swayed by his son, David had no choice. He could not stay in Jerusalem. He would not let blood be shed within the holy city. So the king did something unthinkable, he fled. The mighty David, the warrior who had slain Goliath, the man who had led armies to victory, now walked away from his own throne. But this was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign of wisdom. David knew that if he fought Absalom in the heart of the kingdom, it would be Israel that suffered. And so, with a heavy heart, he left. But as he walked barefoot out of Jerusalem, weeping, he must have asked himself, how did it come to this? For Absalom, this was not enough. He did not just want his father's throne, he wanted to humiliate him. He wanted to erase David's legacy, to ensure that no one would ever see him as a king again. With ruthless determination, Absalom entered Jerusalem as its new ruler. He took what belonged to his father, shamed his name, and made it clear, David's reign is over. But he underestimated the man he sought to replace. How many families today are torn apart by betrayal? How often do children turn against parents, convinced they know better? How often do leaders fall because of those closest to them? Absalom's story is not just about a prince rebelling against a king. It is about the pain of family conflict, the wounds caused by pride, and the destruction that comes when ambition outweighs love. David was down, but he was not defeated. And as Absalom sat on the throne, believing he had won, he did not realize one thing: his greatest battle was still ahead. Absalom sat on the throne, but his victory was not complete. David was still alive. And as long as David lived, the kingdom was not truly his. Absalom gathered his armies. He would hunt his father down, crush his forces, and erase the last threat to his rule. He was no longer just a rebellious son, he was a king at war. But war is not won by ambition alone. David, though heartbroken, was still a warrior. He may have fled Jerusalem, but he was not finished. His loyal men, seasoned soldiers who had fought beside him for years, gathered around him. A battle was inevitable. David divided his forces carefully, sending them into the forests of Ephraim, where Absalom's larger army would struggle to maneuver. Before the battle began, David gave one final command to his generals. "Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom." Even after everything, even after the betrayal, David could not bear the thought of his son being harmed. But war has no mercy. Absalom rode into battle on a mule, his long, flowing hair, his symbol of beauty, his mark of pride, flowing behind him. But as he rushed through the dense forest, fate intervened. His hair caught in the thick branches of a great oak tree. The mule kept moving, leaving him dangling in the air, helpless, trapped, completely exposed. The very thing that had set him apart, the thing he took pride in, became his downfall. David's men found him there, hanging between heaven and earth. One of them ran to report it, but Joab, David's general, did not hesitate. He would not spare the traitor. He drove 3 spears into Absalom's heart. The rebellion was over. How many people today are trapped by their own pride? How many build their identity on their appearance, their influence, their ambition, only to see it become the very thing that destroys them? Absalom's story is a warning. Pride, when unchecked, leads to destruction. And those who seek power at any cost often find themselves powerless in the end. But as Absalom lay lifeless, the war was not truly over. One battle remained, the battle in David's heart. For though the kingdom was restored, a father had lost his son. And no victory could erase that pain. The news spread quickly: Absalom was dead. The rebellion had ended. The kingdom was safe. But for David, there was no victory. When the messenger arrived, he spoke cautiously, knowing the weight of his words. "May all of the king's enemies meet the same fate as Absalom." But David did not celebrate. He did not breathe a sigh of relief. Instead, he broke. David went up to the chamber above the city gate, and there, away from his men, he wept. He did not weep for the kingdom, nor for the battle fought. He wept for his son. "Oh, my son Absalom! My son Absalom! If only I had died instead of you, oh Absalom, my son, my son!" The mighty warrior, the man after God's own heart, was now a grieving father. No amount of power could ease his pain. No victory could undo what had been lost. Despite all that Absalom had done, his betrayal, his rebellion, his hatred, David still loved him. He still wished he could trade places with him. Because no matter how much a child turns against a parent, the bond remains. This is the depth of a parent's love. A love that endures, even in the face of heartbreak. How often do we see broken families, estranged relationships, wounds that seem impossible to heal? How many parents grieve over the paths their children have chosen? David's grief is a reflection of that pain. He shows us that even when love is rejected, even when a child turns away, a parent's heart still longs for restoration. But some lessons come too late. Some realizations only arrive after the damage is done. For Absalom, there was no second chance. And for David, there was no way to bring his son back. The story of Absalom is not just a story of rebellion, it is a story of loss. A loss that could have been avoided. A loss that serves as a warning for us all. Absalom's rise and fall is not just an ancient tragedy, it is a mirror held up to our own world. His story echoes through time, revealing truths about power, pride, family, and the consequences of unchecked ambition. But what can we learn from him? How does his story apply to our lives today? Absalom was known for his beauty. His long hair, his flawless appearance, he was admired, envied, celebrated. But his beauty became his downfall. The very thing he took pride in was the thing that led to his death. How often do we see the same pattern today? In a world dominated by social media, where image is everything, how many people fall because of their own vanity? How many are trapped by their need for admiration? The lesson is clear: when pride takes over, destruction follows. Absalom betrayed his own father. He manipulated, deceived, and turned people against the very man who loved him. But in the end, his betrayal did not lead to power, it led to his ruin. We see this same betrayal in politics, in business, in families. People stepping on others to climb higher, only to find that the higher they go, the further they fall. The lesson? Loyalty matters. Integrity matters. And those who build their success on deception will eventually face the consequences. David loved Absalom, but their relationship was filled with conflict, silence, and unresolved wounds. In the end, David wept not just for the loss of his son, but for all the moments they never had, all the words left unsaid. Families today face the same struggles: estrangement, bitterness, rebellion. Parents and children grow apart, wounds go unhealed, and sometimes, it is only in loss that we realize what truly matters. The message is simple: don't wait until it's too late to mend what is broken. Absalom wanted power, but he did not understand leadership. He won people over with charm and empty promises, but he lacked the wisdom, humility, and heart of a true king. How many leaders today follow the same path? Politicians, CEOs, influencers, people who crave power but lack the character to wield it wisely. A true leader is not one who seeks power at any cost, but one who serves, sacrifices, and leads with integrity. In the end, Absalom's story is about choices. He had the opportunity to humble himself, to reconcile with his father, to take a different path. But he chose pride. He chose rebellion. He chose destruction. And we face the same choice. Will we let pride control us? Will we betray those who love us? Will we chase power at the expense of our character? Or will we choose humility, forgiveness, and wisdom? Absalom's story is a warning. But it is also a chance to reflect, and to choose differently. Absalom sought glory, but in doing so, he lost everything. The kingdom he wanted, the legacy he craved, the relationships he hoped to build, all crumbled because of the choices he made. It is a stark reminder that when we allow pride, ego, and a desire for control to guide our decisions, we risk losing not only our integrity but also our most cherished connections. David, in contrast, shows us the complexity of love and leadership. Even in the face of betrayal, his heart remained tender toward his son. His grief over Absalom's death, despite all the pain he had caused, speaks to the unconditional love parents have for their children and the deep wounds betrayal can leave behind. In today's world, we see the same battles for power, the same temptations to manipulate and deceive, the same struggles within families. Leaders rise and fall, relationships break, and pride destroys. But Absalom's story also offers hope. It calls us to examine our own lives, to ask ourselves, are we letting pride control us? Are we allowing ambition to guide our decisions? Are we nurturing our relationships with humility and integrity? Now, it's time to choose humility over pride, love over ambition, and relationships over power. If Absalom's story has taught you anything, let it be this: life isn't about how high you rise, but how deeply you love and lead with integrity. If you found value in this lesson, subscribe to our channel, share this video with those who need to hear it, and reflect on your own life. Let's learn from history, so we don't repeat its mistakes. Your choices today shape the legacy you leave tomorrow. Choose wisely.